Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Data Breaches, where we cover 5 of the most interesting data breaches of this last week in one of our favorite bourbons. I'm Steve.
Davia.
I'm Miguel.
Howdy, I'm Shu.
Hey, I'm Tom.
Well, Devian, what do you have for us this week?
So for story number 1, this is kind of interesting. I haven't heard about this. And this was from Sunwing Airlines in Canada. And they're dealing with delays for a 3rd day, and they're blaming like a cyber breach. A technical problem at Sunwing Airlines that continues to ground flights is being blamed on a data security breach at the company's 3rd-party provider. A system that is up and running all the time, which never fails, was hacked. So what do you guys have to say about this story?
Well, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's my Argentinian nature where I doubt everything that I read on the newspaper, but I mean, could that be the real reason for the delay? Or maybe they are just blaming it to an ethereal cause, somebody from that cannot be pinpointed. I mean, yeah, we got hacked. I mean, that's a pretty regular excuse when somebody tweets something down here and they are forced to actually come clean and actually acknowledge the monstrous and horrible things they say here in Argentina. The first explanation is, oh, I got my account hacked. That wasn't me. So maybe that's the case. I don't know, maybe I'm being too suspicious.
So I would say they probably did get hacked, because if you remember a few weeks ago, there was a company that was like, oh, no, we didn't get hacked. We hacked ourselves, right? Like
Yeah.
in the US, everything is so litigious that people don't want to admit to ever being hacked. They're like, no, we released that data intentionally. So I think they probably did get hacked. And I think that this is very similar to Colonial Pipeline, right? Where like a cyber attack can shut down real world physical transportation or pipelines. And I'm glad that like this is only preventing new flights from leaving. As opposed to like flights landing, that would be much worse.
And here's my intersection here. It's why are we not talking about front foot versus back foot? So back foot is Colonial happens, right? And everybody deals with it, but we are front foot. So why wouldn't we like literally like put ourselves out there as front foot? Because everybody's always defensive, they're not reactive.
Yeah, I think the problem's been people see security as a cost center. And so whenever you have a cost center, you minimize cost, and then you clean up the mess when that doesn't work. So I think there's a good case to be made that you should be looking at security as preventative. And it's a penny for the prevention and a pound for the cure, right?
We need to be more positive. Like we need to tell these people, hey, you need to. It's really hard to get our dollars like to the CISO like suite until you get like the San Francisco 49ers when you get $62 million ransomware. You know what I mean?
I think, one of the things that drives prevention is regulation, but regulation is so notoriously slow. You think of what is regulated, it's you must provide some sort of security training once a year, right? So like we all know that doesn't work, but that's all that's written into regulation, and they made it so loose and toothless that it doesn't actually do anything.
Yeah.
And so the only way you do this is new federal cyber laws, or I think that several regulations are ready for a revamp, like HIPAA.
Yeah.
HIPAA should have continuous threat monitoring for every hospital employee, because that's going to be way better than just assessing fines on the back end.
No, you're right. No.
So I think one very important part of this article that aviation expert John Graddick was quoted here, and he basically like wrote our marketing material here. He alluded that it's a third party, and he said that was to blame, and he says Sunwing is just as to blame as its third party for what happened over the past 3 days. You have to make sure that you as a buyer vet the capabilities and functionality of what you're buying. So yeah, he basically says third party risks, pretty serious.
If only there was a platform that made that easy.
There was only products.
Well, too bad there's not.
Oh.
Okay, moving on to story number 2. So this is following the story from last 2 weeks, Okta, and Okta was breached recently. And now they're saying, so first, you know, like they're saying that. Like,
What? Kidding.
Only 2.
Oh, I thought he sneezed. I'm sorry, my bad.
Only 2.
So anyway, so they say only 2 of the customers were impacted. Previously was 366. And what do you guys have to say about this? Because this seems a little sus.
This
Yeah,
was
only 2. Sorry, go ahead,
this
Steve.
like it was written by a
lawyer.
lawyer. And I think the lawyer was playing games with the word impacted because I've seen within hacker forums, like hackers saying they have Okta tokens that can take over XYZ companies. So I think the original number is more accurate. And I think the second number is a lawyer saying, well, only 2 of our customers experienced catastrophic failure, allegedly. And so, yeah, I think whenever a cyber company gets lawyers involved, you're not going to get the truth. And that's just the state of all breach notification is if you're waiting for Okta to tell you what happened, you're going to be waiting for a long time. You're in for a very bad time. You have to use a third party that like specializes in this to actually know what really happened.
So,
I think 300 is low. I think probably every customer was impacted in some way.
I got the name of those 2 customers.
So-
One is called all, and the other one it's called everybody.
I thought you were going to say one is called you and one is called me. Yeah.
So here's the thing. In their statement, they acknowledged that the attackers had access to Slack and Jira at that time. So my question is, let's give them benefit of the doubt that the attacker tried to get access into 2 counts, only 2. But what other information was in Slack and Jira? Potentially like every customer of Okta. Maybe there's some keys there, especially in Jira and Slack. So maybe like every customer of Okta.
Can I raise my hand here? Can I, in all honesty, as the tip of the spear here, we get asked about it and we don't know how to respond.
I'll tell you how to respond. Tell them that they had access to Slack and Jira and we don't know what information was in Slack and Jira.
Okay.
Maybe these 2 customers were affected, but this is how you get supply chain attacks.
Yeah.
By getting any sort of information about the company and its customer base.
Okay.
I would say that to your point, Shu, getting access to Jira or any code related service, my main concern is SolarWinds, right? Like you think of how bad SolarWinds was. If someone can modify Okta at a code level, then this could be infinitely worse. And so I think we're at the point that we can't just rely on lawyers to tell us how it's not a bad situation. I think we're at the point that we need a full code review. We need outside firms to tell us how bad this is, because you know what, Okta's entire business is built on trust. And at this point, I don't have that. I think it's time for a bourbon break. So for today's bourbon break, we have, we're cheating. We're gonna cheat today. Sorry. Michter's small batch, unblended American whiskey, US 1. Now, this does not qualify as a bourbon. And the reason this does not qualify as a bourbon is because they use pre-used barrels. So in the US, for bourbon qualify as a bourbon, it has to be in unused oak barrels. These barrels have been used before. So I would liken this in flavor profile to a lot of what you're seeing these days in terms of re-aging or recasking bourbons. So you'll see bourbons that are recast in like sherry cast and whatnot. Michter's just skips a step and they just start the whole process in pre-used barrels. That being said, it's still pretty much a bourbon. And this is highly recommended. I'll let Divya tell you more about it.
Okay, so for this bourbon, Michter, well, it's not bourbon, the US 1 American whiskey. So it's got 41.7 alcohol by volume. It's a small batch. So they have limited quantities, comes from Kentucky, and 83.4 proof. The tasting notes are deep butterscotch and vanilla notes, hints of caramel and dried fruit with a ripened fruit finish. And when you go to total wine, it runs for about $43.99. So in the state of Washington shoe, I have no idea how much
that's like 120 in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
Before sales tax, yeah.
So the caption reads, unlike bourbon or rye, this whiskey is aged in a way that utilizes whiskey-soaked barrels to achieve a rich and unique flavor profile. This allows mellow flavor with less intense, smoky, charred influence found in bourbon. Instead, it has a sweetness, oak, mint, and spice flavor. And what's funny is like when Steve poured this into his shot glass, I was like, I smelled some intense coffee, and I think I've been drinking a lot of French vanilla lately. So what are your thoughts on that, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, hot takes from Divya. Tasting notes definitely include some French vanilla coffee. I think everything that Michter's does on this bourbon is absolutely right. So I've had their pure bourbon, I've had just their bourbon, I've had their rye, and those are good. But you get just a complexity of flavor, a deeper flavor with the American whiskey, the US 1, that you just don't expect from this young of a bourbon. I think this is 2 to 4 years or something. The flavors that you would get from this type of bourbon, you'd expect on like an 8 to 10 year bourbon, right? I think of the Evan Williams single barrel, which is like aged for at least 8 years, I believe. So this is a hard bottle to find. If you can find it, I'd say absolutely get it. It's a delicious bourbon. It is not heavy on any one flavor or any one element. It's probably got a pretty low to non-existent rye content because it doesn't have any of that rye spice. So it's an incredibly smooth, buttery, medium mouthfeel. And if you've ever had anything from Michter's, right? Michter's has a very distinctive flavor. It's probably like their process, their yeast. But I would say that this is the best thing that I've had from Michter's. Now I've not had like their 10-year, or any of their more advanced and more expensive items. So this is something that I highly recommend it, even though it's not technically a bourbon. It is, pretty much a bourbon, and I think that this is a great sipping bourbon. I probably wouldn't mix it with cocktails. I'm sure the cocktails would be great. You'd just be missing out on a lot of the subtle nuance to the flavor. Shu, have you had this one?
I have had maybe everything from Michter's, and everything from Michter's is pretty much as you described, very smooth, very flavorful. I definitely remember having the US 1, but I don't remember exactly the notes. Anything from Michter's is legit.
Yeah, they put a lot of care into it. Like they tell you the exact batch number. I don't see how long this was aged, but I wouldn't be surprised if they went 4+ years on it. It's not a high proof, so I'd love to try some of their high proof stuff. I bet it's delicious. But Michter's can get super expensive. Another thing is Michter's does a lot of subtle advertising in the show Billions on Showtime. Billions on Showtime, great show. You should check it out. Sponsored. And they have a bottle of Michter's in like every scene. You just have to like look for it. So it's always in the background. So it's super subtle, but also not that ineffective, because now I want to buy those bottles, but they're too expensive. Like they're 10 years, like hundreds to thousands or something like that.
So like, because Billions is sponsoring us, that also means that we're indirectly being sponsored by Michter's in a sense.
Great. So Michter's, please send more, especially more of your 10-year,
yeah.
your willing subjects. Activities.
But so
Michter's good shit.
So I don't know anything about like bourbon or whiskey, but you said that this tastes like a more mature whiskey. And then it says that it utilizes like whiskey soak barrels, which are older. Do you think that has something to do with enhancing the taste or making it taste more mature?
Yeah, I mean, you can have, bourbon goes through a lot of different processes, and the barrels change over time as well. You know, the more you age the bourbon, you're also aging the barrel. And you end up with much more mellow, subtler flavors. There's even this whole science behind it, where like you typically age barrels in a building, and the building typically has like, you know, like a wood, typical Kentucky building for aging bourbon would be like 6 floors, maybe 4 floors, and then a bunch of windows, and it's all wood, right? And that's pretty much it. They found that the barrels that are at the top and closest to the windows are like the harshest bourbons, and the ones that are at the bottom in the shade go through the most mellow aging process. And so when you buy like a 10-year, you're typically buying the bottom floor barrels that age the most in the most gentle way. If you buy like a 2-year, you're buying like the top floor barrels that like they've done all they can do. Like they're gonna be harsh no matter what. So there's a like barrel selection and barrel mixing. It's a whole art and a science. And so I think if you take that and you take like long aged barrels and then you put fresh bourbon in it, they're going to pick up on more of that characteristic. So I think Michter's is doing everything right. I wish more producers did this, because there's a lot of bad bourbon out there that doesn't need to be.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Moving on to story number 3, you guys. So this is regarding, I believe, okay. Attackers unleashed Lockbit ransomware on US government computers. And this is according to Sophos, and this is something that I also saw last year. But one attack highlighted in the report found that ransomware groups spent at least 5 months combing through a regional US government agency's files and system before deploying a Lockbit attack onto the affected computer. And apparently, the root of the attack stemmed from vulnerabilities from the system's open firewall ports. Now, these guys are making the laws and legislation. So what do you guys have to say about this?
Well, I gotta say, you have to be pretty courageous or stupid to go ahead and launch an attack on the US government. I mean, either you have a death wish or I don't know, you really know what you're doing. And you are definitely not in the States, and you're on a country that has no extradition treaty with the States.
Yeah, you're probably in a country that has no extradition, and like everyone else is distracted by that country invading certain neighbors. So yeah.
Could you be more? Steve? I'm not getting it.
What's Russian for Lockbit? I don't even know. It's Niet Blat. Yeah, they don't care because they're not here. And I'm not surprised they chose the US government, because while the FBI and the three-letter agencies are known as being quite secure, like, we're still all in the middle of the fallout of the OPA breach, the Office of Public Affairs, basically leaking. That was like the HR group of all of US government.
Yeah.
And they ended up leaking everyone's information. And so, like, just because you're federal US government doesn't mean that your site is secure at all. In fact, it could mean the opposite. There's a reason that hackers go after municipal governments, because they don't have the budgets or the, typically the security team to provide a robust infrastructure. And so I'm not surprised. I think this makes complete sense. We see Lockbit every day. If they're not the most prolific ransomware gang, they're giving Conti a run for their money. And I think that what we're seeing with Lockbit is they're just going to aggressively go after everyone. And I think that the reason they waited 5 weeks is their whole thing is they want to spread to as many places as possible. And so they're probably reviewing those documents to see, before they tip people off, like while they're still in incognito mode, who else can they break into, right? Like I'm sure they're looking through like the third-party risk domino effect, like, okay, I'm in this government agency, can I bridge the gap into others? So I think you're going to see this time and time again. Lockbit does not care. Like, they are not pulling punches. They will ransom like the president himself if they can.
Yeah, and you're right, they are extremely prolific. I mean, we see them getting activity every single day.
If only they had a web developer who could make a proper website for Lockbit. Come on, you're still limiting your URLs to like 15 characters, and then you do ... and that doesn't work for anyone. Like,
shame.
Your user experience is shit. Get on it.
Story number 4, and this is extremely spicy because T-Mobile, our friends at T-Mobile, once again confirmed Lapsus hackers breached internal systems. I want to say they were a part of like a huge data breach like last year. I got an email personally, and T-Mobile has confirmed that the Lapsus extortion gang breached its network several weeks ago using stolen credentials and gained access to internal systems. So what do you guys have to say about this story?
So I use T-Mobile, and I got a hack notice to my phone, and I looked at it, and my first thought was, didn't I already see this one? Like, is this a duplicate? I feel like I've already seen this one, but no, this is a new one.
You were not being duped.
I was not being duped. This is so 6 months from the last time T-Mobile was broken into. Yeah, this sucks a lot. And like, at this point, an AI like bot could write this story. It's like, hackers stole passwords and broke in through remote desktop and stole all the data. Like, it's almost just a trope now. So I don't know. I feel bad that they've stolen my data once again from T-Mobile, but I've never even received identity theft from T-Mobile.
Yeah, me neither. These unscrupulous individuals are out here wilding out, and we don't even get identity protection.
I've not received any ID theft protection. I don't even think T-Mobile's ever sent me a letter. So like, I don't know. It sucks, but also at this point, like, they get broken into every 6 months, allegedly.
Yeah.
So like, maybe that's on me now.
Well, it's like 2018, they have disclosed 6 other data breaches. So I don't know the math, so you do it.
I wonder about the time frame because the news said several weeks ago. So what's the protocol for disclaiming a breach? I mean, is there a timeline or something you need to follow, or it's just loose and you do it as you go?
I mean, I think it probably took them several weeks to find the breach. Little known facts, isn't T-Mobile like a Seattle Bellevue company shoe?
Yeah, right down there. They're my neighbors.
Yeah. So,
In
you know,
Factoria. Yeah.
I feel like Shu would know all about this.
I don't use T-Mobile.
Why not? They're local.
Yeah.
They're a local company like Amazon and Starbucks.
Yeah. Last story of the evening, and this is going to be about Wawa. $12 million data breach settlement gets final approval from judge, so they have to start sending out money to the people who were affected, and they're actually paying it in like a form of gift cards, I believe. So
No.
two years.
Great.
Of them. No, listen,
How is that even legal?
I don't know, but like there's 3 tiers of people. So there's like the first group of customers who would get a $5 gift card, second group would get a $10 gift card, and the third group would get $500 in cash, who can demonstrate certain expenditures or other out-of-pocket losses resulting from the data breach. They are also like with the story, it's also like there's another parallel story that's going on, and Wawa is actually trying to sue MasterCard for $32 million. So because of some, related to this data breach. So what do you guys have to say about this story?
This is one of the stupidest stories I've ever heard.
I love this story. Great story.
Because you know what's going to happen? Wawa did the math and they said, we are actually going to make money on this data breach. Because if we give everyone $5, they're going to spend 15.
Yeah.
Like, there's companies that will literally mail you a $5 gift card and it gets you into the store. It's counted as a marketing expense. And then you're going to buy more than $5 and you're potentially going to go back because you've been to the store once, right? Like it's the whole, like, get them in there once and they'll come back many times. So like now this is the worst thing ever because this is just going to like incentivize Wawa to like, let's get breached again. Like, nowhere in Wawa are they thinking, let's increase our security budget. In fact, they're like, whoa, we just made more money by being insecure. Like, what if we actively gave hackers our customers' data, allegedly?
Allegedly. First off, I love Wawa. I had to change outfits because I went to Rutgers for undergrad. Wawa is the greatest thing ever. My God, those sandwiches at 2 a.m. So good.
You like such obscure, I mean, like you like beef, what is it, Buc-ee's, and like now Wawa is your second one, and like
Look, yeah, I love Buc-ee's, I love Wawa, apples and oranges. Don't ask me to prioritize them. Apples and oranges, love them both. But no, to your point, Steve, let's do the math here. 22 million people were affected. At the bottom tier, they give out $5 gift cards. Now the math says they should be on the hook for about 110 million, but they're only paying 12 million. And like you said, they're
not paying anything. They're paying negative 50 million because if they give out 12 million in gift cards, they can actually pre-count that as revenue. They can pre-count the gift cards as in-store purchases as revenue. Like, this is going to increase their bottom line.
The greatest episode of Bourbon and Data Breaches. If you like what you saw, be sure to like and subscribe and smash some button somewhere. If you don't comments.
If you did not like what you saw, like, subscribe, and comment.
If you don't like what you saw, like and subscribe anyways.
Make sure that somebody else